Hello there. My name is Jasom Jensai, and welcome to this episode of live streaming. Why'd I call it an episode? I'm reviewing episode 9 of Bad Batch. That's probably why I called it an episode, because it's written right in front of me. But anyways, I'm reviewing episode 9 of Bad Batch. Just came out on Friday. But that's what we're doing in this stream. But before we get to all of that, let's get to the question of the stream, which is, who is the Prime Minister of Kamino? And it appears I have an extra pyramid right before the word is on my screen. Oops. Oh well. It's legible, so let's go with that. But let's move on to the topic of the stream, which is The Bad Batch, episode 9. So let's start with a recap of what's come before, just so we're all caught up and I can talk about things, so I can mention things and you'll understand where I'm coming from. So, episode 1 is pretty good. Clones are not my favorite part of Star Wars. I'm more into, the Jedi and stuff and the Force and all that. But, it's interesting. I do like all parts of Star Wars. Well, not all parts of Star Wars, but I do like most parts of Star Wars, even if I like other parts more than others. So the first episode was good. We got to see a whole bunch of cool stuff. Then after that, it was a lot of filler episodes. And then it started to pick up in episode 8, I really liked. Episode 7, I don't know what it was about episode 7. I didn't really like it that much. But it had all the things that I should have liked about the show. So I don't know. I was a little bit confused by that. But then at the end of episode 8, Omega gets captured by Cad Bane. And it's awesome. I like it. So let's see what they do. Or I should say, how do you phrase this? What happens in this episode is what they do with it. And honestly, it's kind of like episode 7. I'm a little bit disappointed by what they did with it, because I think the reason I'm disappointed is because I have all these cool ideas for what they could do, and it's not that I'm so set on any one of them that if they do something different, it's just disappointing. But the problem is, especially in this episode, they just didn't do anything that interesting with it. Like with Wrecker, in episode 7, his chip went off, and it could have been this crazy emotional scene, and they tried to go for that a little bit, but it wasn't really, I don't know, maybe it's just me. A lot of people liked the episode, but it just felt like they could have done more with that. It was a cool setup, but the payoff wasn't as good as the setup. And then in this episode, Omega is captured. Cad Bane, this epic bounty hunter, rival of Jango Fett and Boba Fett. He's the best bounty hunter there is. You could argue Jango Fett or Boba Fett, but arguing between those three is it doesn't matter. If you're one of those three, you're the best there is. So he has Omega. He's bringing him to Chanwi and Lama Su, and I forget the other one's name. But this puts the Bad Batch in a huge predicament, because now what are they going to do? They gotta go to the rest of the season with Omega not there. Unless they capture her, but that'd be ridiculous, right? In this episode, they end up recapturing her, and so here's what they could have done. It's something kind of like, if you've seen Avatar: The Last Airbender, Appa's Lost Days. Actually, I think that's the episode title where they show what happened. But basically, there was in the middle of season 2, there was a 4-episode stretch where they didn't have Aang's flying sky bison. And if you haven't watched that show, that probably sounds like a really weird sentence. It's fictional. Most sentences probably sound weird if I'm talking about it. But definitely watch that show if you haven't. It's awesome. But they have this, Appa is their transport. He's Aang's friend. He's, Aang literally met him when he was a kid, and 100 years later, he's still there with him. He goes everywhere with him. He's his transport. You could argue, Katara or Sokka, maybe. You could argue they're closer to Aang, but I think Appa is probably Aang's best friend. And for him to be gone, it brought so much tension and drive to the show. It made it very interesting, because you want to see how these characters deal with it. And the other thing they did is most of Team Avatar was in the library when that happened. There was a library underground in the desert, and they were in there. But one of the characters was on top because she didn't want to go in. She can't read books because she's blind. And blind, but not weak. So it's not super surprising. Or it's kind of surprising when Appa is actually taken and she couldn't do anything about it because she was. Anyways, if you've seen the show, you know what I'm talking about. If you don't, basically the point is, it's not her fault, but Aang blames her anyways. And this is like not like Aang at all. He's usually a very forgiving person, but it's Appa, and he just needs someone to blame, and it creates tension between the characters, and it's just really good. They could have done something like that with Omega, but instead the team gets her back right away. Like, let's see, how did she get captured? Hunter is taking the ship. Like, you could have had Wrecker disappointed with Hunter, and then maybe like Wrecker wants Tech to be the team leader or something. I don't know. Maybe that might be a bit out of character, but you could have something like that. You could have this tension of these characters not knowing where Omega is. But yeah, so the whole plot of this episode is kind of disappointing to me because it takes away a lot of potential for what the show could have done with the characters to make it more interesting and engaging. And we're probably going to be back to a bunch of filler episodes now, which, to be fair, that's most of what, like, you could argue filler or not, but that's a lot of what Clone Wars and Rebels and even Mandalorian has been. It's just, I feel like it could be better. So, other than that, there's one other major gripe I had with this episode, and it's the treatment of Cad Bane. So, he wasn't terrible. Like, he's still a pretty good bounty hunter, but one, Omega escapes, and it's not that she escapes, because she actually escapes in a pretty clever way, with Total 360 being at lame, and Cad Bane is busy landing the ship. What's he gonna do? The problem is, she gets off the ship, and out of the she runs all the way to a communicating device really quickly, and Cad Bane doesn't catch her in time. I just feel like that wouldn't have happened. Now, if you wanted to not have the Bad Batch come in, and then you just have Fennec Shand show up, that'd be fine. Oh, one other thing to mention, I'll get to that later, hopefully, if I remember. But, so, back to what I was talking about. Okay, so, then after that, Fennec Shand shows up, and Cad Bane and Fennec Shand get in a fight. And ultimately, it takes a while, to be fair, but ultimately, Fennec Shand wins the fight. There's this thing, this thing bothers me. Inconsistent power scaling. It's reasonably prevalent in Star Wars. Some of the notable examples are like Obi-Wan beating Darth Maul in The Phantom Menace, even though his master lost to him. That was mostly due to his arrogance. That's how it's explained away. But you still need an explanation, and that's not good in itself. It's better if the fans don't need to explain away things. It's better if it just makes sense on its own. Then you've got what else is there? I know there's more. And Luke beating Vader in Episode 6. You could argue he's grown, but to me that fight always just seems like he shouldn't really be able to beat Vader. You definitely have Rey beating Palpatine in The Rise of Skywalker. You've got Rey beating Kylo in... Well, that's not really inconsistent power scaling. That's their first fight. That's just a matter of not showing training beforehand and giving her the powers of training. This is not a new thing to Star Wars, but it just frustrates me every time I see it. And this is one of those examples. Cad Bane should have destroyed Fennec Shand. He even tells her she's inexperienced, and maybe he's underestimating her, but I just don't feel like that's something Cad Bane would do. He doesn't really underestimate people very often. And sorry if you can hear people talking in the background. My sister is yelling about something. So that just annoys me when that happens. I don't know. It just shouldn't happen in my mind. And the other thing is, there wasn't really a huge point to it. They could have just had Cad Bane go back to the Caminos, and Fennec Shand just wanted the money. I mean, maybe they want to do something different with their character, which I could see happening. I don't know if they'll do it, so it's hard to say at this point whether it's important. But the big reason, at least for now, that we see for why Cad Bane can't succeed and bring Omega back is because then Omega would die. Because, the Prime Minister, can't say his name because actually that's the question for question of the stream right there. Who is the Prime Minister of Kamino? Answer that and you get 10 points. But, so, that guy and Tanwi are also, I forget the other Kamino's name, the one with the red. They're talking and they basically say, yeah, bring Omega back and then we'll terminate her after you get the DNA. And this just doesn't make any sense. First of all, you could just get rid of that line. And not just the line, but the whole idea. But two, that doesn't even make sense. Why would they eliminate her? What's the point of it? The reason they want her back is so they can make more Django clones, right? I mean, maybe there's something else too, but Tech says at the end of the episode that she is a, like, pure copy of Django, which that doesn't make sense because she's a girl. And it doesn't make sense for the Prime Minister to want her dead, because if that's true, the reason they want her back is so they can have access to more Django DNA. But obviously they can't have access to more Django DNA if they kill her. So why are they, what is the, I don't know. And this is one of those things it's hard to judge the whole TV show when you've only seen 9 episodes, because maybe they'll explain that. I don't know. But as of right now, I'm a bit confused, and it doesn't seem to make sense. But yeah, that's most of my thoughts on the episode, but there's general things that, I don't know, I like to see. I feel like Cad Bane should have used his rocket boots more. He tends to use those more usually, but I guess just he didn't want to today or something. Who else is there? Oh, Cad Bane's robotic thing. Cool theory, but I feel like if he got shot in the head, he would probably die. And sorry, that sounded really condescending to anyone who likes that theory. It is a cool theory. I just don't believe it. Because I think he would get killed if he got shot in the head. I don't mean to be condescending with that. So that's my thoughts on that. It's just a pretty simple. I don't think he would survive. Now, if he got shot in like a piece of armor or something and fell over and hit his head and they thought he was dead, that can make sense. Then again, Darth Maul got cut in half, but it's like I always say with Mace Windu. Mace Windu surviving can make sense. You can be like, oh, well, he can survive falling. Darth Maul he survived getting cut in half. Vader survived getting burned in lava. He can survive that, but it's also a narrative thing to where if Boba's the one who kills Cad Bane, that's awesome, because it's like Boba is Cad Bane's successor then. Jango Fett to Cad Bane to Boba. Or maybe you could look at it like Boba is Jango Fett's successor, and Cad Bane and Jango were rivals, and so it just makes sense. Like it's just good that they have like this rivalry that ends with Boba winning, ultimately. And in the same way, Anakin killing Windu is what turns him to the dark side. It just represents so much of his falls to the dark side. So that's one of the big reasons I think Mace Windu shouldn't survive, getting my words mixed up, and why Cad Bane shouldn't survive if he has a shootout with Boba Fett and gets it. But yeah, that's my thoughts on that theory. What else happens in this episode? We get to see a new Kaminoan planet, which is like a colony or something.